The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. It's time for Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. We'll talk all things Hokie wrestling with Coach Tony Robie and staff. Now, let's join your host, Hall of Fame wrestling writer and broadcaster, Jason Bryant.
Another episode of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Jason Bryant here with you today, talking with Hokie head wrestling coach Tony Robie, as the Hokies are, somewhat fresh off a tournament in Las Vegas at the Cliff Keen Las Vegas Invitational. But a lot of folks in Blacksburg were on pins and needles heading into last week, and it was because the Hokie football program, bowl eligible again, heading into that victory against Marshall. That's got to breathe a sigh of relief for Hokie Nation.
Yeah, I think so. I think as much as anything, I give Coach Fuente and his staff credit for, keeping his guys fired up and excited. And, those guys obviously didn't have the season they expected, and things didn't go as well as planned. That's just part of Division I athletics. Sometimes that's the way it goes, and they had a lot of adversity. And, that's kind of when you see what you're made of, and I thought they handled it well and finishing things on a high note. So credit to them and a credit to their staff and then the entire football program.
Circling things back to wrestling, the Hokie wrestling season. Last we talked, you were heading into duels with Missouri and Northwestern. Both of those did not go the Hokies' way. Let's just talk a little bit about those events before we focus in on Vegas and preview Princeton. With David Mcfadden not in the lineup, that's obviously going to cause a bit of an issue in terms of how swing matches go, especially against Northwestern. But, Daniel Lewis against Missouri, that's a match that you really can't put in the win column either way. But overall team performances and things that you needed to reassess after those road losses at Missouri and Northwestern.
Well, I think going into those matches, we knew, without David and really without Billy Miller in there, that our margin for error was very small. But to me, I wasn't as disappointed about our team losing as much as how we competed and some areas that we were really deficient in from a wrestling standpoint, and just really made a lot of mistakes and gave a few matches away, didn't wrestle smart in some places. So there was a lot for us to come back and work on when we got back, and for us to continue to work on based on our early season evaluations. I really thought against Missouri, Mekhi Lewis, a lot of things, almost everything that could have went wrong in that match for Mekhi went wrong, and he ended up losing a close match, was in on the leg at the end for the win, or I think maybe to tie it and put it in overtime. But, he gave up 2 hands of the face calls, and there was a bunch of other calls that, could have went one way or the other, and that's the way it goes, but you can't put yourself in those positions. And I felt like John Borst gave a match away at the end, too, at heavyweight. So those were disappointing. Our bottom wrestling has been disappointing really the whole season, and it's an area of focus for us. And then at Northwestern, the same thing. I mean, Mitch Moore won or lost a winnable match. Ryan Blease lost a match that I felt like he should have won by 4 or 5 points. Watching the film, if he would just convert on a few takedowns and made a few small adjustments. So to me, that's really the frustrating part of it is, number one, some areas that we really need to improve on that are essential to the sport of wrestling. And that's on us as a coaching staff, that we weren't prepared in those areas. And then just making some mental mistakes and letting matches get away from us and just not getting our hand raised in situations where we could have gotten our hand raised.
Funneling that into 12 days off, then you go to Las Vegas, and the performance, not the finish team wise you want, of course. At this point, you never really know how much team points are really effective, but you never want to finish outside of the top 5 in something like this when you're a program like this. But ultimately finished 11th as a team, not as many placements as you would like. But let's just start down the line. Joey Prada opened up with a win over a Division II All-American Josh Portillo of Nebraska Kearney. Before running into All-American Sean Russell and Tiny Sean White of Clarion. First real big tournament exposure for Joey, and what's he need to improve on in this situation?
There's a lot of areas that Joey needs to improve on. I think, number one, he needs to be more aggressive. He's tentative when he steps out there. His bottom wrestling is definitely deficient, and, he needs to continue to get bigger and stronger. He's not a big 25-pounder, but he's coming off 2 years of injury, and this is his first year in the lineup, and this is really his, first year of Division I wrestling. So there's a lot to work on at 125, and right now he still has the opportunity there, but that's a weight class for us that's kind of up in the air, and we'll see how that plays out as the year goes along.
And one thing we want to let Hokie Nation know, this invitational format was just one wrestler per weight, so we're only talking about one Hokie because that's all that was entered in each weight class, unlike some of the opens or even the Southern Scuffle where you can have a couple entries, whether they be attached or unattached. So hence we're only talking one Hokie a weight class here. 133 Corbin Myers had a decent win opening up against Dylan Duncan of Illinois, then loses to a pair of All-Americans, Nick Suriano, Montori Bridges. Bridges knocked him out after he was upset early. And I guess maybe Hokie Nation probably wondering, they see the ranking of Corbin coming in. Is this about the performance that, he should be winning these? The match, I think, against Bridges was extremely winnable in terms of you looking at it on paper. Suriano may be on another tier right now, but, what are some expectations of Corbin at this point, and where can he improve to hit that podium and beat guys like Bridges?
I think Corbin's right there. I mean, he lost. He didn't, Suriano's pretty darn good, obviously, from the results from the rest of that tournament. And he wrestled Suriano pretty well, and thought that against Bridges, I really thought that Corbin was right there, and he certainly could have won. He got ridden in the overtime ride out, if memory serves me correctly, to lose that match. So the two areas that Corbin really needs to focus on to make that jump to the next level, and he's really, really close. I feel like he's made progress since Missouri and Northwestern, and then through Vegas. I mean, we've seen improvement from him in the room as well. As he has to be able to finish takedowns and really wrestle for 7 minutes and maintain focus, and then his bottom wrestling needs to continue to improve. He ended up getting ridden by Bridges, and that's how he lost that match. But felt like Corbin wrestled pretty well overall in Las Vegas, and I feel like he's headed in the right direction overall.
So much can be talked about kids coming into new programs, and how long does it take, do you think, for a transfer to really get his feet wet? I think Ryan Blease, it took him almost a year to get year and change to get situated in Blacksburg. I mean, what's going to be like for guys like Slade, Miller, and Myers?
I think they've been here long enough that transition should be taking place, and that's kind of on us as a coaching staff to make sure that we continue to get to know these guys and assist them in the areas that they need assisted in. And I do think as a coach, it's good to see kids compete. That's when you really see where they are good and where they need improvement. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to tell in the room. So as we compete more, hopefully we'll see, especially with Billy and Slade and Corbin, we'll do a better job coaching those guys and figure out what areas they need to improve in to, ultimately get on the stand at the NCAA tournament. And I think they're all capable of that. So, it's certainly a work in progress, and we're just in early December, but we still, obviously have a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah, as you're catching a theme here, 25, 33, 41, 49, 57 DNP in Vegas will continue on. Dom Latano picked up a couple matches, victories, including one over Nathan Boston, who was a highly sought-after recruit. Started his career at Iowa State, now wrestling at Campbell before being bounced by All-American Jaden Ironman and then L.J. Bentley. First question is, where's Mitch Moore here, and thoughts on Dom Latano's performance?
Mitch actually he went to Vegas. The plan was to wrestle Mitch in Vegas. He got dinged up on Tuesday at practice the day before we were scheduled to leave on Wednesday morning. So it was a last-minute thing. I don't think Mitch is going to be out for an extended period of time, but unfortunately, Mitch missed a big opportunity for himself to prove himself and to get some big wins and, help him down the road when it's time for the postseason. So that was unfortunate, but, we feel pretty good about Dom. Dom's made some huge improvements, maybe one of the most improved guys on our team since last year at this time, and has really wrestled pretty well throughout the course of the early part of the season, and he was in his first major event, and he had to wrestle Ironman, who's on a different level. But I like where Dom's at, and if we have to put Dom out there, I feel good about sitting in Dom's corner. I mean, he's going to go out and scrap hard. He's got some things that he's pretty good at. So, he'll continue to work, continue to improve, and hopefully, we'll see where that thing shakes out at. I don't think Mitch is going to be out too long, but we'll see.
Moving to 149 pounds, Ryan Blease, not exactly the performance you kind of expect from him at this point. Gets a win over Parker Filius and then loses to Opsel from Air Force, who actually had a pretty good tournament. He had knocked off Tommy Thorne earlier and then gets teched by Christian Levis. You had talked about the bottom work. This is obviously something that's going to need to be addressed here at 149.
Yeah, absolutely. Was quite honestly disappointed. Ryan was disappointed in himself. He's capable of a lot more than that. I think the biggest thing with Ryan is consistency. He's proven that he can wrestle with some of the best guys in the country, and he can beat some of the best guys in the country. I mean, last year during the course of the season, he beat guys that were eventual All-Americans and round of 12 guys, and had a nice run through January and part of February. But consistency is a big deal for Ryan. So, we're working with Ryan closely to figure out, if it's a physical issue, if it's a mental issue, and just try to tweak our approach with him as much as possible. But he was definitely capable of a lot more than he showed in Las Vegas, and he's frustrated. We're frustrated. And, he's going to have to get on his game pretty quick here because he's got the number one ranked guy in the country on Friday night against Princeton. So it's another opportunity for him to go out there and make some adjustments and compete against a top level opponent.
Making adjustments, BC Lipread coming in there. Tight, close match, tied up at the end, gives up a big throw against John Van Bill and gets pinned in the pigtails, and comes back, wins 3 before being bounced. Positions, sometimes it sets the course for an entire tournament. BC doesn't get thrown there. Say he wins the match, that kind of maybe changes the entire mindset. What's he need to improve in that particular situation? And especially, we're looking at one move in one match of the 5 that he wrestled, but that seems to be that was the tipping point for his tournament.
Yeah, I think, the first thing I'll say is BC, from an effort standpoint, I like what he's bringing to the table. Have no problem with his effort, typically when he steps out there and competes. I mean, he leaves it all on the mat. I just think from a wrestling awareness standpoint, there's some improvement that BC could make. I mean, he was ahead in that match, and he tried to, was on top. The guy got to his feet, and he tried to just hold on, ended up giving up a stall warning and a point, which tied the match up, and then the kid went double overs and pitched him to his back and ended up getting the pin. And if he would have just let the guy go, worst case scenario, we're tied and we go to overtime, when we're in our best position. And, that's an awareness thing. And to me, BC's got to be more aware, and he's got to understand that guy's really good in a double over position. And you've got to be able to, number one, feel that stall call coming, because worst case scenario, I mean, it's a possibility you give up the stall call, then the guy gets an escape, and then you lose by 1 anyway. So, that's something in your mind that you have to be aware of. You have to kind of have a clock in your head of the referee counting down to those 5 seconds. And if you get close, you got to cut them and just live to fight in overtime. And I felt like that was a mental mistake. It would have been a nice win for BC over the guy from Rutgers, who's really solid. So, that's an area that our whole team needs to improve on. And we've made a lot of mental mistakes that have cost us matches.
165 pounds, Micaiah Lewis comes out with a second-place finish coming from the number 7 seed. And you just talked about everything that could go wrong, that did go wrong against Connor Flynn, who many people thought, Micaiah would have a type of schedule that would set him up for success and not really see adversity until later in the season. He saw it right off the bat with the Missouri loss, then gets in there, beats Branson Ashworth, who was red hot, coming off a win over Chandler Rogers of Oklahoma State, and Bryce Steyer, returning All-American from Northern Iowa, fresh off a red shirt, loses to Isaiah White in a match that was pretty boring. Let's be completely honest here. Both of these guys are great on their feet. Neither of these guys really did much on their feet. And the difference there, maybe a little bit more experience for Isaiah White, a little bit better in the top position.
Yeah, first off, love the way Micaiah Lewis competes. Typically, I mean, even in his loss to Missouri, he went out and he lets it fly usually. And he won a couple of those matches in Las Vegas with guys in on his legs and just fighting them off with tremendous pride and effort and trying to win all the small battles, and it would have been real easy in a couple of those situations to give up and give up takedowns. But Micaiah, he's the guy wants to win. His will to win is extraordinarily good, and that's what ultimately going to separate him from the pack, I believe. He's a great athlete, a talented guy. He needs to continue to improve and become a better, more well-rounded wrestler, and not just go out there and try to be a better athlete than everybody he wrestles. When you get up against a guy like Isaiah White, who's equally probably close to the same kind of athlete that Mekhi is, you've got to be a little more wrestling savvy, a little bit more technical, and I think that those are some areas that Mekhi can improve in, and obviously we got to be able to get off bottom. I mean, again, it was a match where our bottom wrestling lost the match for us, and it's a problem, and it's been a problem all year, and it's something that we're going to continue to address until we get it right.
How do you address bottom situation? That's one thing I'm wondering from a technical standpoint. Well, we got to get better on bottom. We got to get better on bottom. What is it? Is it just, practicing more knee slides? Is it finding ways to, to sit out better? I mean, what is the type of practice and type of drills that can help wrestlers get better off bottom? If you say we need to get better off bottom, how do you go about doing that?
I think you just got to put more focus there. And that's on us as coaches that we didn't put enough focus on that through our summer training and then through the fall, and probably spent a little bit too much time working on freestyle in the off season and not enough time focusing on bottom, which is like I said, that's on us. But I think it's all those things that you mentioned. We've got to teach really specific situations on bottom and go over it multiple times. It's got to be, you got to put as much emphasis on bottom as you do on your wrestling in the neutral position and on top. And for us right now, we have to put more so. We have to pay attention to the small details. We have to wrestle situationally in some of those areas in practice, and we've got to fight harder off bottom too. That's a big part of it as well. So I just think it's a focus thing. It's an attention to detail thing. It's an effort thing. It's all of those things, and that's how you improve at anything that you do. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Cody Hughes goes in at 74, picks up 2 wins on the back, loses Andrew Morgan and Devin Kane, both fairly solid opponents, not exactly bad losses by any means, but Cody steps in there, of course, in the absence of David Mcfadden, and he's been a guy that's been able to plug in, and he's in there fighting, and thoughts on Cody's performance.
I thought Cody was capable of more. I felt like that he left a little bit out there. I felt like from a just being competitive standpoint, I mean, it was okay, but I think I see Cody train. I see him work in practice. I see him wrestle guys like David McFadden, Mekhi Lewis, and Zach Zavadsky, and I know that he's capable of more than he showed in Las Vegas. I went out there with expectations of him being in it to place. I thought he was capable of doing that, and quite frankly was disappointed that he didn't have a better outcome.
184 pounds, Zach Zavadsky, All-American, finishes 4th. The only guy he lost to was another All-American, Drew Foster from Northern Iowa. Lost to him twice, front side and for 3rd and 4th. Then is this a matchup situation where Foster's just got a little bit of a quirkiness that Zach can't handle right now?
It was this weekend, I guess. I mean, I think if Zach's wrestling at his best and his intensity is really high and his focus is really good, I think he can wrestle with anybody in the country. I think he's proven that. But that in those areas he needs to be more consistent. We've seen over the course of his career where he does have some lapses and does have some performances that are a little bit head scratching. And not that he wrestled poorly, and not that Foster's not a very good opponent, but to me, I think Zach Zavadsky is as good as anybody in the country, and I think that he's certainly capable of winning those matches. And to me, it was a competitive thing. I think he needs to be more competitive every time he steps on the mat and have a little bit better just intensity for 7 minutes. And for whatever reason, he's inconsistent with that, and we need to make sure that that's no longer an issue.
As an athlete, from your perspective, you didn't lose a whole lot, but when you go through a tournament and you lose to a guy twice, what goes through your mind as the season goes on, hoping to get another shot at this guy?
Well, probably won't get another shot at him unless I'm mistaken until the NCAA tournament. Right, I don't know if they're at the scuffle or if they're at so hopefully you get an opportunity to see him again. The shoe's been on the other foot before, where Zach's beaten guys twice during the course of the season, and then he's lost them at the NCAAs. So I'm not overall worried about Zach and his wrestling and his skill, and he's plenty good athletically. I know that on any given weekend, he can beat anybody in the country. He proved that last year at the NCAAs by having a good tournament, but we just got to make sure he's on when it really counts. And again, we need to be really, really consistent throughout the course of the season.
Tom Slade coming in, finishing 7th, gets upset by unseeded Greg Bolsack of Clarion before being knocked out of the tournament by J.I.L.O. of that school up in Charlottesville. That's a conference opponent. That's one you're going to see later on in the year. Seventh place. I mean, you're on the podium, but this guy's he's a veteran. Yeah, he's new to the program. But he's a veteran. Seventh place. You probably have a higher expectation in a weight class that's really kind of open for the taking in a lot of ways.
It is, and I think Tom needs to just eliminate mistakes. He's making a lot of mistakes and doing things out on the wrestling mat that he's not really, that aren't part of his wrestling. I mean, he needs to stay in his box and wrestle where he's comfortable from, and and just try to stay in the areas where he's better than the guy. And sometimes I think he's getting out of his comfort zone a little bit, and that's part of improving as a wrestler. But at the same time, you're setting yourself up for some bad things to happen. And like I said, he's another guy where I think if we could just eliminate the mistakes and wrestle smarter, I think we could have much better results. Again, his bottom wrestling cost him in some matches, and finishing takedowns. And that seems to be kind of the theme for our team right now and where we're at. And those are the areas that, for me as a coach, that really, really stand out, just from a technical standpoint, I guess.
And moving heavyweight, John Bohr still coming in just a shade over 215 pounds, typically coming in, runs into top seed Gable Steveson, the talented true freshman from Minnesota, and then is bounced by Demetrius Thomas, the Pitt transfer, who's had success at the NAIA level as a NAIA champion and a runner-up at Williams Baptist. And, he's given up some weight, but he made the effort to go up there. And, where does John need to improve? Of course, some of these guys are just really big, and that size is an issue, but, tactically, where does he need to improve?
I think John's plenty good enough at wrestling to go out and beat a lot of these guys, to be quite honest with you. I don't think his weight, I'm not saying it's ideal, but you can't, that's what you weigh. It's not an excuse. He made a decision to go to heavyweight, and if he wants to compete at heavyweight, he's got to, that can't be a reason for you to lose matches. I think for John, it's a matter of, going out there and wrestling hard for 7 minutes and wrestling through every single position and winning all of those small battles that you have to win wrestling matches. If he can do that, he's a good enough athlete. He's a big enough, strong enough guy, a good enough wrestler, has enough wrestling skill. Those are the areas he needs to improve in, and he knows that. I mean, he knows that. He's verbalized that to me, and that's kind of what our focus is with John right now. So, we'll see how that progresses. I do think Billy Miller is going to be in the lineup here pretty soon to see what he can bring to the table. So, heavyweight could be there could be some changes coming at heavyweight.
As we look at it, we talked about working on the bottom, and how do you mitigate some of the mental aspects of these bad losses and these guys that you expect more of, and say, hey, it can't keep you down. You can't let that performance stick with you. I mean, as a coach, the mental aspect of it is so important. But what's the speech? What was the post-tournament speech like with these guys as a whole?
Well, I think that our effort needs to improve in some areas, and we need to go out there and compete harder and be more aggressive. And we need to go out there with the mentality that we're going to take the win from our opponent, and not. I think we have some guys that for whatever reason. They're not aggressive enough. They're not attacking enough. They're not going out there with the mindset that they're going to wrestle really hard for 7 minutes and see what happens and try to break the guy. And that's, what we have to get to. And as a coaching staff, that's our job, to try to instill that in them. And, we realized that we took some guys to Vegas that maybe weren't at the level to go out there and, beat some of the top guys in the country, because it's obviously a very competitive tournament. But at the same time, it's not always about getting your hand raised. It's about how you compete in the process. And I feel like if you compete really hard and you give really great effort, and we can fix some of the wrestling areas, and we're kind of going back to the drawing board and looking at the areas that we need to improve on. We've already talked about that a little bit, but the one thing that we need to be more consistent with is guys going out there and wrestling harder and being tougher and being more aggressive.
Of course, the question you get a lot with Dave Mcfadden coming off U23s. Was he ready to go for Cliff Keen, or is it the Princeton duel? We're going to see him here. When will we see Mr. Mcfadden back in the lineup?
Yeah, David had a minor injury that he was dealing with. I mean, that's why the plan was to wrestle David. So he had a minor injury that we didn't feel like it was smart for him to go out and wrestle 5 matches at that event with an injury. So I think there's a pretty good chance we're going to see David tomorrow night at Castle Coliseum. So we're really excited about having David back in our lineup. He brings great energy to the entire team, and he's our team captain, one of our team captains. So, we're excited to get David back in here and in the maroon and orange soon.
And we'll talk about that match with Princeton. Still not rated in the coaches poll, the dual meet poll. They are in tournament rankings on various outlets, but they come in fresh off a win for the first time in 50 years over Lehigh into Hokie Mania. That's December 7th. That's this Friday at 7 p.m. at Castle. So first of all, Tony Robie, what you gonna do with Hokie Mania? That was really bad. That was poor. That was take two. What you gonna do, Tony Robie, when Hokie Mania runs wild? Okay, let's try that. Is that better?
That's better.
All
yeah,
right.
I like it.
So what are you gonna do?
What are we going to do?
what's the
I'm
promotion?
not going to do much.
What's the promotion behind Hokie Mania is what I want to know.
Well, I think they're just trying to tie in the WWE theme to Virginia Tech Wrestling and hopefully get some young kids excited about it to come out and check out the wrestling. I think it's probably a good tie-in for us from a marketing standpoint. And, if you're good at marketing, you got to find any angle that you can get to get people excited and hopefully draw a good crowd. So I know that we'll have a great crowd tomorrow and people will be fired up. It's our first time in Castle this year, and we won't be back in Castle until the end of January. So there's not a lot of opportunities left in this part of the year for the wrestling fans to see us compete. So hopefully we'll have a great crowd, and hopefully we'll compete better than we have been. I mean, we better be on our game and ready to wrestle. Princeton's got a really, really solid team. Obviously some great individuals in there as well. And they're going to be fired up. Sean Gray, it's probably appropriate that it's Hokie Mania night. Sean Gray is coming down here. He's kind of like a WWE guy. So Hokie wrestling alum coming back to Blacksburg. So it should be exciting.
You know something, brother? We're going to talk about 125. Yeah, I'm going to stop this right now because I don't know how well it comes off in the podcast. If you're listening at 2XP, that just sounds ridiculous. But Princeton, yeah, not a team to look past because on paper, matchups-wise, they can pick up some points in some key places. Let's start at 125. Patrick Glory, true freshman. This guy's a hammer. I mean, he's highly ranked already. They go in 133 pounds. Jonathan Gomez, Marshall Keller. This is a local flavor. He's a Christiansburg alum. He's in the lineup right away. And so there's going to be maybe some local loyalties kind of tested there at 141 of those who are from Christiansburg and Blacksburg. Matt Kolodzik, as you mentioned, at 149. He's ranked number one in the country. A good lineage here as the legacy of the Monday family. Quincy Monday, the youngest son of Kenny Monday, in the lineup for Princeton at 157. Dale Tiongson at 165. He just had a huge win over Cole Walter of Lehigh in their dual meet. Travis Stefanik, no slouch at 174. Kevin Parker, he's a beast on top at 184. Patrick Bruck at 197. Their only real hole is at heavyweight. So, on paper, you said you can't really look past any match here. I mean, this is going to be a fight.
No doubt. Coach Ayers and his staff they've done a great job building that program up. And not only are they solid, but they've got some outstanding individuals, like you mentioned, 125, 149, 197. Come to mind, watching video, those guys all stand out and are going to be, challenges for us. But, for us, we just have to focus on ourselves, getting ready and making sure that when we go out there, we're ready to compete, we're ready to have fun, and we're ready to just throw it out there the whole time and have no fear of getting tired, no fear of losing, and going out there with the mentality that we're going to take the win. But I do think that 141 and 157 are going to be huge matches in this dual meet, and very well may determine the outcome. So, we're going to need whoever it is we end up throwing out there at 141, whether it's Mitch Moore or Dom Latona, to step up for us, and then also BC Lipread is going to have to step up for us. So, in my estimation, those are going to be two of the biggest matches in this dual meet.
Yeah, and as I'm looking at it on paper, and since I'm a somewhat unbiased, executor of this particular show, I'm looking at Tech favored, clearly in 5 weights. Princeton clearly favored in 3, 2 toss-ups, and those are the 2 that you mentioned there. So, any one of those matches, one upset can swing the balance of a dual meet. And, when we look at the emphasis on dual meets and being able to bring in promotions like the Hokie Mania, be able to bring in high school teams to wrestle duels beforehand and things of that nature, How hard is it for you guys as a staff to really kind of keep Hokie Nation engaged when you go, okay, we got 2 road duels to start the year. Now we've got Vegas. Now we're home. Then we're not back for another month and a half. I mean, thankfully for a lot of Hokie alumni, the Virginia Duels is nestled in there in the second weekend of January. But from a marketing promotion standpoint, maybe from a standpoint of keeping the athletes fresh, knowing that it's going to be a while before they wrestle and stay in their own beds again before competition.
Yeah, I mean, it's, wasn't ideal. From a scheduling standpoint, would have liked to have had another match in 2018 in Castle Coliseum on the side of the calendar, and thought we had one, and somebody pulled out on us. But it is what it is. I think that people around here have come to expect exciting dual meets and exciting events when they come to Castle for wrestling matches. So I think it'll be much of the same. Our marketing department's done a great job for us. Helping grow attendance and growing our fan base. And, I know there's a lot of people that are excited to get to Blacksburg to watch us this Friday.
That one's on the ACC Network Extra. Those of you, I think that one's tied to ESPN Plus. I think that agreement is still in case you can't make it out to Castle for Hokie Mania. Now, one question that's at the tip of your tongue or tip of my tongue when it comes to Hokie Mania, if Tony Robie were a professional wrestler, what would your gimmick be?
My gimmick be? That's a good question. I'm not really a gimmick kind of guy, but
let's just say the black trunks bald-haired thing has already been overdone. So Goldberg and Stone Cold have that knocked out. You can't go there. I
had a good move. They used to call it the forklift, where I'd get in a front headlock and just lift the guy up with my back and my neck. So that might be my gimmick. Maybe take them all the way over, feet to back from that position. I really don't know.
By God! It's anyway. I'm not going to even tell you about the Jim Ross game we used to play in college. Now, to keep with the pro wrestling theme just for a minute, who is your favorite pro wrestler of all time?
Jimmy Superfly Snuka. But not even close.
Yeah. So why? Because he would jump off of a giant blue cage 40 feet in the air and just land on people.
Yeah, he jumped off the top rope, was an athletic guy. He would be my go-to guy for sure.
Who was your most hated wrestler? Who did you hate? Like, full-time heel. Mine was the Honky Tonk Man. Couldn't stand him. Who did Tony Robie see on Saturday and be like, man, I hate that guy?
God, it's been a long time since I've watched WWE. I don't know, maybe Hulk Hogan.
You didn't like the Hulkster.
He was a bad guy for a while. I don't know if you remember.
Well, it was a little before my time when he was a bad guy. Back when he was Terry the Hulk Bollea and Sterling Golden in the AWA. He came in. He was a heel for a bit, and then the whole Iran-Contra or the whole hostage thing. They turned the Iron Sheik. Anyway,
you know what? I think you hit it right there. The Iron Sheik would probably be my guy. Now that you mentioned,
I love the Sheik now because he is the most unsafe follow on Twitter out there, except for maybe Dylan Palacio. But we won't go there. But Coach Robie, good luck against Princeton. It's going to be an exciting duel. Those of you who are out there in Southwest Virginia, December 7th at Castle. Hokie Mania, I would say wear your best spandex, but you don't want to be not let into the building. So we'll let promotions and marketing take care of that. Coach Robie, thanks for the time as always.
All right, thanks, Jason.
Hokie fans, listen to Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling anywhere you go by subscribing on Apple Podcasts. Go to InsideVirginiaTechWrestling.com/iTunes, or you can get the exclusive Android or iOS apps by going to InsideVirginiaTechWrestling.com.
Show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.